Jennifer, am I correct that the mayor's not going to be able to join us?
You didn't tell me that.
Okay, I must have dreamt it.
Yeah, as far as I knew, I talked to him yesterday as well. He was coming for everything today, so.
Perfect. Let's give him 1 extra minute and then we'll jump in. Okay, why don't we get started? We do have quorum. Welcome, everybody. Good to have everyone here. Call the meeting to order. What time is it? We're at 2:31. There are a couple of housekeeping items. As always, the YouTube recording of this meeting should be posted tomorrow. This is our final official meeting of the summer. Barring any emergencies, that should take us to September 15th, which is when we'll have the next board meeting, as well as the Finance and Administration Committee meeting. I wanted to take just a couple minutes to congratulate a few London Police members. First of all, at the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement event that was just held, we had 5 members of LPS recognized. We had Constable Patty Leroy Costa, who won the Teamwork Award. We had Sergeant Danielle Thomas, who won the Innovation Award. Detective Maria Wright, who won also an Innovation Award. Crime analyst Sarah Harmer, who's named after my favorite singer. She won the Civilian Award of Achievement. And then the very wonderful Constable Kathy Fountain. Some of you board members may not have gotten to know her as I did because she ran the Citizens Academy, which is an amazing experience. And fingers crossed, one day we'll be able to redo that again. And so I got to know her in that capacity, and she won the Community Service Award, which I'm sure was very, very well deserved. She's also responsible, by the way, of organizing some of our auxiliary graduation and promotion events. She did that last week. And Vice Chair Shabar, thank you so much for attending that on behalf of the board. It was the first time it was in person in a couple of years, so that was an exciting change. And last but certainly not least, not for as part of the Ontario Women in Law Enforcement, but I also found out that our very own Sergeant Ziad Zabian won the Ontario Association of Chief of Police Awards for excellence in the advancement of equity, diversity, and inclusivity in policing, which is obviously tells us a lot about who Sergeant Zabian is and how much he's contributed in that area. As I'm sure you're all very, very aware, June is a very difficult and heavy month for the community of London. And I just wanted to give the vice chair a chance to just say a couple of words. I think he wanted to talk briefly about what's been going on.
Thank you, through you, Chair Toth. I just wanted to take an opportunity at the top of the meeting just to say, both personally, professionally, on behalf of myself and the Muslim community, just our sincere thanks to Chief Williams, Deputy Chief McIntyre, Deputy Chief Betts, and the entire London Police Service for the extraordinary amount of support that you provided the Muslim community in particular and the London community in general as we marked the 1-year anniversary of the Afzal murders. And to have you and the London Police Service stand with us, not just symbolically, but substantively, really meant a great deal to so many in this community. Symbolically, I saw, the chief and the deputy chiefs and so many members of the London Police Service at all of these events marking the commemoration of the 1-year anniversary. To have you there symbolically to stand with us in solidarity means the world. And I don't actually think there are words to properly capture the value of that. And then not just symbolically, but substantively. The security concerns, the logistical concerns, it's a 1-year anniversary, and there was it weighed heavily on a lot of people. And to know that from a security perspective, from a policing perspective, that we were able to gather, commemorate, remember, mourn, and heal under the umbrella of protection that the London Police Service provided means a great deal. And so I would be remiss if I didn't take an opportunity to publicly thank you, Chief, the deputy chiefs, and every member of the London Police Service for your extraordinary service, not just 10 days ago, not just a year and 10 days ago, but every day in between. So thank you on behalf of me, my family, the Muslim community. If I could be so bold as to say this board as well, for everything that you've done and continue to do. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. And I think you can absolutely speak on behalf of the entire board with those comments. I wholeheartedly agree. And I see the chiefs and the deputies. Every event I go to, at least one of them is there, and it's seen. I know it is. Thank you for that. Jumping right in, disclosures of interest. Anybody have any? Okay, perfect. So we'll move right along. Introduction of new business. We do have a few things. There are 2 public governance public items that we approved in the governance committee in public session. This need to be approved by the whole board. And that is a new procedure with respect to items that are going to be spoken to in camera, as well as just some housekeeping policy items, and as well talking about board stipends. So I just need a mover and a seconder to add, let's call it 2 items. One is just updates from the governance committee public session that need to be approved. And then the second is the board stipend discussion to the end of the meeting. That's moved by member Branscombe, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any opposed to that? Perfect, and that is carried. So we'll bring that up at the end. Minutes of the May 19th, 2022 public meeting. Can I get a mover and a seconder to approve those minutes? Moved by the vice chair, seconded by member Walker. Any opposed? Brilliant, that is carried. Next up, Deputy Chief McIntyre. There's a Special Investigations Unit report. If you wanted to give us a little introduction to that, anything you'd like to say?
Thank you, Chair, through you. So this report, again, with SIU reports, I always like to preface by saying that they are posted publicly on the SIU website, and our reports often mirror the content of those. But this allows me just an opportunity to give some greater detail and help explain some process pieces and actions of our officers as we go through it. So in this instance, it was an in-custody death. So we had on February the 1st at 3:30, a male, and he was 35 years of age, was admitted into our cell block. He was struggling with alcohol and alcohol withdrawal symptoms, and he articulated that to our staff. He was held overnight for a bail hearing the next morning. So then early morning hours at 8:40 in the morning the following day, he was found in medical distress. Obviously, in EMS attendants, our paramedics are called and transport, but unfortunately the male did die. When those happen, immediately it's an SIU investigation. They are, of course, our oversight body that come in to look at the conduct of the officer, but also the policies and the services of the police service. And were there errors? Should we have done things differently? And really do a critical analysis into the events that day and night. In this case, it was found that the cause of death of this male was actually a methamphetamine toxicity. It was a drug overdose, and the manner of death was described as accidental. So in knowing that, it wasn't anything to do with the alcohol withdrawal or the fact that, you know, the speed at which medical treatment was sought, it was rather an acute drug overdose. When he consumed drugs that were obviously concealed on his person, we didn't know that at the time, he then entered into a seizure and then died as a result of that overdose. It's an incredibly unfortunate set of circumstances. It is not at all what we hope to ever have happen in our cell block. And I know we reported publicly a couple months back on just everything we have done. This is one of those cases that has really allowed us and really to drill down and to look at prisoner care and control and what can we do to really mitigate risk in the cell block. We know that oftentimes anyone entering the cell block is incredibly vulnerable. And they have complex medical cases, and it's not obviously something that we are trained in to be medical professionals. So it's just it becomes a real high risk environment for us, and many things have changed post that, but it doesn't negate the unfortunate circumstances here. So when SIU completed their investigation, that they found that the subject officer acted with due diligence, that there was no concerns through a criminal lens, that the officer was responsible. When I say the officer, we have NCOs or sergeants that are in charge of the cell block. So of course that weight of the decisions and the actions and everything are under the microscope of that subject official. SIU terms them our sergeant in the cell block. So they did not find any criminal responsibility. We do a parallel investigation that even looks further. So from a criminal lens, our officer was cleared, but we look at it as far as misconduct, the Police Services Act, our policies, our procedures, where can we improve, what can we do differently? And that process was completed in conjunction with this. So I give kind of a bit of a long overview of that case, just so it was clear. Many things have been done, but these are the inherent risks of ever having anybody in custody. And it really shows you the complexity of some of these events and really, again, the associated risk. But in short, that is the report. Again, that's all found publicly on the SIU website as well. It'll be posted publicly here, but I'm open to any questions you may have.
Thank you, Deputy Chief McIntyre. Any questions or comments from board members? Thank you, and your report and your verbal report are quite comprehensive, so please don't take our lack of questions or anything, but having received such a fulsome understanding of the events and the tragedy that unfolded, so thank you for that. Next up we have, oh sorry, Mayor, did you want to add something?
Yes, thank you. A question was asked earlier, but I think it bears public witness as well. I appreciate Deputy Chief McIntyre's report on the investigation and that the officer in charge was cleared of any inappropriate actions. You know, we're always extremely sensitive to victim situations, and sometimes there's more than one victim. And what you worry about here is the state of the officers involved. And I know this question was asked earlier, but I do think it bears witness. If you would share with us how that officer is doing, I think that's it feels like an appropriate question to reconfirm.
Absolutely. Thanks. And through you, Chair. So it's not, I don't have to tell the public that when those events happen, when one of our officers is investigated by the SIU, it is an enormous weight and it has enormous impact. And I recognize the need for that oversight body because police have enormous power. And with that becomes oversight. And we appreciate that, but it is hard because at the end of the day, that's never, a bad outcome is never the intention of the officer. Well, 99.9% of the time is never the intention of the officer. And so it weighs heavy because they're your responsibility. In an in-custody situation, you have duty of care of the person in the cell block. And so the weight is enormous. And so it is, I appreciate the question. because it shows that, that humanity piece of all of the work our people do all the time. But anyways, he is doing well. And I think it was is his actions and the sound judgment and, what did he know? What did he do about it? And it was that logical approach he took that allowed him to be confident in his decision making and then to be able to survive the process, which becomes oversight and all of those other aspects. But I know it would mean a lot to him that you asked. So thanks for that.
Thank you, Mayor and Deputy Chief. And just for clarity, the Mayor was referring to earlier, while SIU reports are always presented in public, every once in a while there might be an intimate personnel or legal implication. So sometimes we do have a discussion just on those narrow issues that need to be done in camera, just in case there's something comes up, we need legal advice, for example. So that's what's being referenced there. But certainly, again, the major broader discussions are held in public sessions. Just wanted to make that clear, but thank you again for that. Next up, we have public correspondence. Oh, my apologies. I need a motion to receive that report. If I could have a mover and a seconder, moved by the Mayor, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any opposed? And that is carried. Now we move on to public correspondence. So there's one letter of public correspondence, and that was a response from the Ministry of the Solicitor General about the letter we sent requesting a meeting, as you'll recall, a couple of months ago. Fair enough that the timing was a little bit awkward with the upcoming provincial election, and the public correspondence reflects that. Just a suggestion that given the election, we put that request on hold and revisit post-election. We are now on this side of the election, and so I'm coming back to the board to ask whether or not we want to follow up with the Solicitor General about the letter that we sent a few months back. Any board member? Councillor Cassidy.
I just want to say, notwithstanding some of the discussion we had on this in the past, understanding where you were coming from and knowing that these appointments, it's important, just as our meetings, the default process is public, everything discussed and debated in the public. The default position for appointments and for the both municipal appointments and provincial appointments to this board is also a public and transparent process with people going at the provincial level. You go through the public appointment secretariat, I believe, and everybody, enters through that portal and puts their application in the same way. So I think perhaps there are instances where it doesn't always seem transparent to the public, and so I do appreciate your efforts, Madam Chair, to just seek reassurance from the provincial government that is always the default position. That's our obligation as a board and as all public service type governments and organizations. That should always be the default position. I think we've done what we can. We've just sort of made our position clear as is pretty obvious position, and I think most people in public service have the same position. So I'm not expecting a different response, and so I think we've done what we can. You've done what you can, and I supported your direction. But I think where we are now, I don't think it would do anything to bring it up again.
Thank you, Councillor Cassidy. Any other comments? Okay, great. So I just need a motion to receive for informational purposes that letter from the Solicitor General, moved by Member Walker, seconded by Member Helmer. Any opposed? And that is received. Perfect. Next up, we have recommendations related to femicide and hate crimes against women. And I will turn it over to Member Walker. This is a follow-up to some of the discussions we had at the May meeting with respect to the hate crimes and bias reports. And I know that Member Walker was involved with that and has had some meetings, and this is the result of that. So Member Walker, please take it away.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So yes, there was a recommendation by the board at the last meeting that their gender data breakdown be included in future hate crime statistics, and that I meet and work with Deputy Chief Betts on the report. And so Deputy Chief Betts and I had a really long and extensive meeting, and I really appreciate that. So thank you so much for the time that you gave me. And so we do have a couple of recommendations, and I'm just going to briefly go through them. One of the things that's really important to recognize is that there is a common understanding of what femicide is, which is the killings of women. But there's no criminal code definition, which makes it difficult for the police to lay charges labeled as femicide. And so the first recommendation is that we write a letter to the federal government to advocate that femicide be included in the Criminal Code of Canada. And I've made some inquiries about where that should go. So of course to our 4 local MPs, as well as to Minister Lametti, the Prime Minister's office, and the Deputy Prime Minister. And so I'm not sure if those have to be added in as a amendment, but those are the bodies that I've been recommended to send this to. With respect to the letter, I was wondering if I could write that letter and send it to the board for input and suggestions. So you can make that decision as well as we move through. There are a couple of board policies that will need to be updated. One, well, I'm not sure that it's going to make a big difference if I give the actual numbers, but one is the hate bias motivated crime, and the other one is the domestic violence occurrences. So we're recommending that the board update those policies and direct the chief of police to include a requirement in his related procedures that officers investigating any of these incidents in which the victim is a member of an identified group as defined in Section 314, Section 4 of the Criminal Code, consider motivation of the action, and if that motivation reflects hate, that it would be investigated as such. And so just to be very clear about what the intent here is, that we are specifically requesting that this include instances where women are specifically targeted. And I should point out that in consultations with Myrna Dawson of the Canadian Femicide Observatory, she has indicated to me that actually in Canada, at this point in her investigations, only 1 man has ever been charged under this offense with killing a woman, and it was a non-domestic violence or intimate partner violence incident. So there's a lot of work that has to be done still on identifying the motivation behind crimes against women. And the final recommendation is a 2-part recommendation, which again requests that the board update the hate bias motivated crime and the criminal investigations management and procedures to require the chief include in the annual report to the board 2 things. 1, the demographic information of known perpetrators of hate bias motivated crimes, and secondly, the demographic information of victims of homicide, specifically to reflect the sex of the victim. And of course, the notation in this is that the section would then be later updated upon a criminal code definition of femicide to be femicide. So just, I wanted to highlight a few things around this. One is that Deputy Chief Betts does not believe updating the policies will be an onerous task, and has again agreed to sit with me to help me with that, and then we will send that out to the board. The second thing I wanted to mention is that this is the first recommendation, or the first, if this passes, motion to pass in all of Canada that outlines hate crimes against women and also femicide. And so it is really groundbreaking, and this is what comes when you have a board of leaders and a police service of leaders. So that is really important. We heard earlier that there's already been interest in another police service in Canada in what the police services board and police service is doing around this issue. And as a final reminder, I just wanted to let you know, although I bombarded you with statistics at the last meeting, that every 36 hours in this country, a woman or girl is murdered. And I find that to be just tragic and extremely sad. And I do believe that by naming this as femicide, by establishing a hate crime under those circumstances where the crime is motivated by hate, we can go a long way in preventing the deaths and murders of women and girls in our country. So I have these recommendations on the floor, and I'm happy to respond to any questions. Just beforehand, though, Deputy Chief Betts, is there anything you would like to add that I have not mentioned?
Thank you. Through you, Chair. Absolutely not. I think you've said it all. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to both Member Walker and Deputy Chief Betts for putting in that hard work. Do I have any questions or comments from board members about that? I think that's always a good sign. If I may, I have what I believe would be a friendly amendment. And the only thing is, I think you're exactly right. Like, this is groundbreaking, and I'm so proud of this work. And I'm wondering if I could suggest that we add to the motion, maybe like as a number 4, that we reach out to local agencies. And what comes to mind is obviously London Abused Women's Centre, ANOVA. I'm thinking also maybe at LOSA and NAMRIN for the Indigenous lens. See if they, once the letter's drafted, would they become co-signatories on that letter? And if we could get their input on the updates to the policy once drafted, just give us some any insight that they wish to make on that. I think it would just sort of bolster the work that you've already started, Member Walker, and potentially make it all that much more powerful. So I believe that would be a friendly amendment, but I obviously am in your hands.
I totally agree. And I think we can even spread it wider than just the London and area, because I think based on feedback so far from Ms. Dawson, this is pretty amazing. And she's doing a paper right now around femicide, and she'd like to include the board's approved motion in that paper. So as widely as possible, as far as I'm concerned, is great. The more support, the better.
Wonderful. So Jen, did you catch the spirit of what I proposed? Oh, wonderful. Okay. I think this is great. Any other comments, or are we're in awe? I think this is good work that we're doing. Yeah. See some thumbs up from Member Branscope, and couldn't agree more. Excellent. So we have that motion on the table. Who would like to be the seconder? And that's seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Let's do a full vote. I'm going to call this motion. All in favor? And unsurprisingly, that passes unanimously. Thank you again.
Thank you all so much. Thank you.
No, thank you. Quite honestly, I think this is exactly what we said. This is when that leadership really does shine. We'll reach out to organizations. We'll leave it with you and Deputy Chief Betts to start some of that drafting. And then we look forward to getting updates on this. Okay, let's see. Next up, we've got Revenue Offsetting Personnel Costs Report. Deputy Chief McIntyre.
Thank you, Chair, through you. So this is a standard report that comes to public session, just looking at what revenue offsets our personnel costs today. So no real changes from this one that came to you, I believe, in September. However, there are a couple of new funding streams that I'll highlight in addition to the report, and it speaks to some grant funding just received on victim choice reporting. So that's a new pilot project we're running there. And the second is JOPIS, which is Justice Officials Protection and Investigations section. That's a secondment to the OPP, which does amazing work. So those are the two that just vary from previous reports that you would have seen. But just the recommendation is that the board receive the report.
Any questions for Deputy Chief McIntyre about the memo? Excellent. So if I can get someone to move and second that we receive the report. Moved by Member Walker, seconded by Mayor Holder. Any opposed? Excellent. Moving right along. Next, we have the annual report update on our business plan. Deputy Chief McIntyre, if you could speak to us about the 2021 annual report. I know that Ms. Atchison, I believe I saw her. Yep, there she is as well, just in case there's any other questions. So take it away.
Perfect, thank you. I had the wrong memo in my hand, full disclosure. So progress report on the business plan. So our annual report, which I'll speak to a little bit later in this meeting, does kind of give you a little snapshot of what that is. This progress report to our strategic plan, you'll see the names are interchangeable. So business plan spoke to our former one, our new one moving forward, we're calling the strategic plan, just for clarity. So this gives you a snapshot on what has been done to date. So we've started our internal needs survey in-house. We're moving to a third party this fall to do the public needs survey portion, which is exciting. And then there's a group of community consultations that are pre-booked and will be underway this fall. And so we've updated the appendix. I mean, Joan Atchison, who does all of this work amazingly, and her team in corporate. And so you'll see that the updated in the appendix attached, and really truly, unless there's questions, and I can totally turn it over to Joan because this is her wheelhouse exclusively, it is that you receive this report and the related update.
Any questions for Deputy Chief, or actually, Joan, did you want to jump in and add to that first, and then I can ask for questions?
Thank you for the opportunity, Chair. Really, I don't have much else to add. It really was a very simple progress report. But if anybody does have any questions, I'll do my best to answer them.
Any questions from the board? Great. Chief Williams, did you have anything you wanted to add to that? Business plan's a big part of what we do.
I think it is. Joan never gives herself enough credit, so I just echo what Deputy Chief McIntyre said. She pulls this together with some others, but she leads it and does a fantastic job. She's got great corporate memory and is fantastic to have on our team. So, so for me, the annual report, it obviously represents the progress in terms of the strategic plan, and there's a bunch of measurables in there and statistics because we like to count things, as you know. But for me, it really illustrates the wide variety of work that our members do that many members of the public aren't aware of. And, just to pick a few, you'll see the Prolific Offenders Project is in there. Obviously, the Coast Team, which a lot of people know about. Hotspot Policing, which is something we've been involved in. These are to me, like leading edge. We're preventing incidents. We're deterring incidents. We're getting people help. Upstream before things get reported to police. A lot of these types of activities are difficult to measure because you don't know what you're preventing, but they're really important and they really contribute to community safety and well-being, which is what we're all about. So, I just want to say, thank you to our members. I obviously do some internal messaging on that too, because this would not happen without them. We have 900 people who made all this work come to fruition. It's a great job. And, we're just in supporting roles, really. They're doing the work and they do a great job, both the public facing members and also the ones behind the scenes, equally as important. So my thanks go to them, and I just wanted to highlight those few things. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Chief. So if there's no other questions, can I get a mover and seconder that we receive for informational purposes that annual report, moved by Member Helmer, seconded by Member Branscombe. Any opposed? Excellent, that carries. Next up, an update about the Anti-Racism Advisory Panel. We had a meeting on June 7th, and it was a little bit of a quieter meeting. We'd had quite a heavy meeting previously. It was coming again right on the heels of the memorials and events and just our own internal processing of the anniversary of the murder of the Afswell family. So we kept it a little bit more low key. We did discuss the correspondence that we received from the Solicitor General. It was already something that was going to be part of public record. One really exciting thing that came out of it was some potential partnership with the LPS and perhaps the city. I won't go into too many details because we don't have them hashed out yet, but Deputy Chief Betts knows some people who are doing some really interesting research. Fingers crossed we might be able to partner up. At the very least, there was some discussions about having educational sessions on hate crimes investigations, just to educate the public about what is in the criminal code. There's often misunderstandings about people saying charge them with a hate crime. What does that really mean? What does the criminal code actually allow for? So some discussion about having that information provided to the public. So that is to be discussed further. We haven't said any details, but that was just part of the informal discussion. It just naturally and organically arose. So that was, it's always, those meetings are always a fantastic opportunity for that creative bringing minds together. And then Deputy Chief Betts seemed to know so many interesting people. So we really appreciate his attendance at those meetings as well. Much like the board meeting, we're not going to have any other panel meetings during the summer. We're going to take a summer break, and then we'll be revisiting or re-meeting in the fall. Member Walker, the next item, I don't believe I need a motion. That's just an update. No. Member Walker, did you want to give us an update on the Mental Health and Addictions Advisory Panel?
Sure. So I'd first of all like to acknowledge the co-chair, Christine Geringer, who actually chaired this meeting. And the last meeting was held just last week. And we had asked that the panel come up with their 3 top priorities for action that they wanted and outcomes that they were interested in. And so they have chosen, the panel will first of all, work towards eliminating the stigma of mental health. Secondly, support the COAST program. And thirdly, work with a trauma-informed approach to mental health and addictions. And as part of that, they would like to be able to reach out to London Police Service with some information around trauma-informed services and things of that nature. And we also heard from Sergeant Amy Birch around the Persons at Risk program, which was, of course, very interesting. She's a one-woman show, and how she does it is beyond me. But anyway, I also wanted to recognize Deputy Chief McIntyre, who was scheduled to appear to do a presentation to the panel. And unfortunately, because we were so committed to getting the 3 areas of focus, I had to bump her to the next meeting. So she will be back in September, and we're all looking forward to that. So I really like this committee. It's really an engaging committee of women and men, some who are in the service provision business and others who are individuals with lived experience. And I think we as a team are going to accomplish a lot. That's all I have.
Thank you so much, Member Walker. That sounds fantastic. I feel like that panel is really gaining some momentum, and so that's quite exciting. So thank you. Any questions to either of us about either of those panels? Okay, Excellent. Next on the agenda, Chief and Deputy Chief contract extensions. This is a good news item. I'm very, very pleased on behalf of the entire board to announce that we have extended the contracts of Chief Steve Williams and Deputy Chief Trish McIntyre and Deputy Chief Stu Betts. I can't tell you how much we are looking forward to continuing working with the chief and with the deputy chiefs, particularly during some really challenging times, some really challenging issues facing policing and facing our frontline officers and the community at large. And I know that the board has full confidence in this leadership team to keep addressing those challenges head on. And so we're looking forward to working with them as they continue to do so. I should mention that we're not going to be providing as a board any further details about the length of the contract terms at this time because they are sensitive personnel matters. So that is the extent of the details we'll be providing in terms of their contracts. But did want to make that announcement, and congratulations to all three of you, and a big thank you for staying on during these challenging times. And we have full confidence in you. Any questions, anything about that? Anyone comments anyone wants to make? Okay, perfect. No one's changed their mind, which is good. Now we have, and I mean that the chiefs, not the board. None of the chiefs have changed their mind about staying on. Okay, next up we have a few new business items. I think it might be easier to start off with the governance. So there are two issues in the governance public committee meeting. One with respect to just some policy housekeeping, and Councillor Cassidy, you'll jump in if I misstate any of this. We had some policy housekeeping that we wanted to recommend to the full board to accept, and as well as we adopted a new procedure just in terms of how items are decided, whether they should go in public or in camera, and to just kind of clarify and crystallize a procedure to really make it thoughtful and deliberate. Because as you know, it's really critical that we remain as transparent as possible. And this way we just have a procedure in place to make sure we're always turning our minds to everything should be in default in public as required by the Police Services Act. And when it's in camera, we go through a step-by-step checklist about why it's being in camera. And that memo is available to the public under the public or the government's public committee meeting. You'll be able to find all those details there. Ms. Branscombe?
I just want to thank the chair for bringing this forward. I think it's really, really important. And when you get busy doing these meetings, you kind of forget which things should be in camera and which things should be public. So I think the timing was excellent, and I applaud your efforts to keep us open and transparent as much as we can be. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Member Branscombe. I do appreciate that. So the government's public committee meeting did recommend that the full board approve those items. So if I could get a motion for the full board to approve, and I see that's Vice Chair, seconded by Councillor Cassidy. Any opposed? And that carries. Perfect. Next discussion item is board stipends. So just for the public's knowledge, board members that are not city councillors and the mayor do get paid a stipend. The stipend is set by city council. We did a bit of an environmental scan of what other boards are paying individual members, how they do things. Everyone does it differently, just so you know. There is no uniform approach to how much is paid to members, who is paid. In some situations, everyone's paid. So we did a little bit of that, and that was received in camera simply because some of that information was gathered within our own personal contacts. But we've not yet had the discussion about whether or not we would approve a 3.5% increase in the board stipend specifically, which is what the City of London is prepared to offer. So I open that up to discussion now in terms of whether that is something the board wishes to do, or if anyone has anything to add to that discussion. Member Branscombe.
So I'll move that.
And Vice Chair, I saw your hand up. Was that a discussion or are you seconding? You're on mute.
Yeah, we'll start there. So I said I'll dispense with my comments, at least for the moment, and I'll just second Member Branscombe's motion. Thanks.
Okay, so the motion is to accept the 3.5% increase, seconded by the Vice Chair. Further discussion? Member Walker?
So first of all, this is what happens at City Council as well, where you are responsible for approving or not a salary increase, which I think is inappropriate. I think it should come from another place. But anyway, I do want to say that when I joined or was asked to join the board, it was really for me not about any financial remuneration. It was about making a contribution in the community in whatever way I could. The stipend right now is relatively low compared to the amount of work that board members do. I'm from the outside looking in. Before I was a member, I had no idea that this was the level of workload that you would take on. And I'm not begrudging that. I'm happy to be part of it. One of the things I worry about always is, you know, we are in a situation where we need drastically more police officers and all those sorts of things. And I don't know how I feel about, I mean, it's a small amount, but for some people that's a large amount. And I'm just feeling, maybe it's because I haven't been here long enough. I don't feel the need to take a 3.5% salary or increase at this time, and it's not going to make a difference in my life, and it probably wouldn't make a difference in what we're trying to do with ensuring that everybody who needs a police officer has one at their door when they need them. But for me, it's just the principle of it. And if the board does recommend that there be an increase, I'm happy to donate mine back to somewhere like Crime Stoppers or some police motivated or interested organization. And I understand that that is what some would say, oh, that's the easy way out. But it's actually not. Like, I really thought a lot about this, and it's just how I feel. I don't begrudge anybody that does it. It's how I feel.
Thank you, Member Walker. I just wanted to, for full transparency, in case people didn't know what is the amount of stipend that we receive. Provincial appointees, the vice chair, and the city appointed citizen receive $7,590 a year. And the chair receives $8,487 a year. And I don't know if I made this part clear, the 3.5% reflects the lesser of either the labor index or the consumer price index of Ontario. Just adding that information on the table for further discussion. Vice Chair.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. So I would want to echo a portion of what Member Walker said there. When I was appointed, I truth be told, I didn't even know that there was a stipend. I actually thought it was just a purely volunteer thing until Jennifer Foster sent me payroll documents, and I thought, what she sent me payroll documents for, and then that's when I realized it, right? And so I think it goes to the larger sentiment that Member Walker was talking about, which is nobody comes to do this work for the pay. I said recently, no one ever goes into policing to get rich, and I don't think there's a member of the board here or anywhere that would go into this and say, "Oh, I'm doing this because of the paycheck." And so on that basis, I think it's worth noting that publicly. That being said, there is a stipend, and boards right across the provinces have varying amounts of what they get paid for those amounts. And I think that at least symbolically, we would it would be worthy of consideration to make sure that we're commiserate with our counterparts across the province when it comes to those things. You can accept the money, you can donate the money. Again, to Member Walker's point, I think we're talking probably a few dollars. You know, a 3.5% increase. I haven't done the math itself, but it's probably, we're talking some nominal amount of money, right? But I think from the symbolic perspective, if there is going to be pay, then you know, I think that at least symbolically, I would be supportive of you know, an increase on an annual amount, in this instance 3.5%. But I may do exactly the same as Member Walker. If the board passes it, I may just likely will just donate it. So thank you.
Any other comments? If I may, since I don't see any other comments, I'd like to add one something to mull over as well. I completely agree with Member Walker and Vice Chair about feeling it's a little bit odd talking about giving yourself a raise, but it is what it is. That's how this is done. And echoing that, trust me when I say as chair that the stipend of $8,487 does not match at all the level of work. And I don't say that begrudgingly. I do not say that resentfully by any means. So please don't take it that way. But it's just the reality. It does not reflect the amount of work that this role entails. My instinct when I saw this on the agenda was, no, the times are difficult. We're all tightening our belts. We know that we need, everyone's, you know, trying to get more for their budget to do really, really important work. There's one thing that stops me from completely going down that road, and perhaps Vice Chair and Member Walker have the right compromise, and that is when I have approached people and encouraged them to be part of the board, and when I've explained that it is a pretty substantial workload. When people do not have the privilege of having financial security, that stipend can go a significant way in terms of some compensation for the amount of time it would take. And what I don't want to see is the lack of remuneration and being a barrier. And what that means is that the only people that would apply to be on the board are people who can afford to be on the board and afford to take the time off from other work to be on the board. So just from that lens, that equity lens of remembering that, could that be a potential obstacle? We may want to visit this issue from that lens at a future date because, and I don't think this is revealing too much, we are actually pretty much on the much lower end of what board members are paid. Again, I don't say that because I want or need the more money, but I say that just to highlight and ensuring that being on this board remains accessible to everybody from all socioeconomic areas. So I add that to the discussion. Member Walker, yes, please.
So I respect that. I really do, and I understand what you're saying. I just wanted to add one more thing about my own perspective, and which is that I have been on the board for only 6 months since January, and my understanding is this would be retroactive to January, which means I really wouldn't have even sat on the board. I wouldn't even attended my first board meeting before being given a raise. And actually, I've never ever been involved with any organization where I've had a raise within the first year even. So for me, it's just, you know, I come from the not-for-profit sector where historically we just don't get raises. And if we do, they're only after a specific amount of work has been done for an organization. So I'm just going to add that I'm not judgmental or critical of what anybody else does. I will vote against the stipend, but really I just can't see myself taking additional money for a job I didn't do. That's all. For that first month, I really didn't do anything. So anyway, that's just for me.
Thank you for clarifying that. Any other comments? Questions? Okay, so we have a motion to accept the 3.5% on the table. I'll call the question. All in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Thanks so much for that. Hold on, let me get back to my notes here. I believe that was all the new business. Yep, that resolves all the new business items. So again, a reminder, we're on break for the rest of the summer. So the next full board meeting and the next finance and administration public meeting is September 15th. Oh, Jennifer's giving me.
Sorry, Chair. Deputy Chief McIntyre and I have been chatting in the chat. One of the items she wouldn't mind going back to for a minute, and I couldn't find your name in the chat quickly enough before you finished the meeting. Can we go back to the annual report for a minute? She just wanted to add a couple of comments about that. Is that all right?
Yes, no, of course it's all right. Absolutely. Deputy Chief McIntyre, go ahead.
Sorry, it's my confusion on the title of it on the agenda, hence my wrong board report. So the report I spoke of the business plan and the update to the business plan. That's also, so that was a high level on that. The annual report is the comprehensive report that comes to everyone. It is posted publicly. It is largely generated from our corporate services with corporate communications and media do tons of work on that report as well. It is our comprehensive report that's provided as part of adequacy, as part of the City of London protocol. It is part of course, board policy. And it really kind of outlines a few things. I can hold it up for you. You're going to see it published there soon. It's a fat one. Joan and her team yet again with CorpCom, all heavily involved in all of the work that goes into this. But just a couple highlights, if I may take your time right at the end of a day. One thing that you'll see in this report that we love is page 16 speaks to COAST. You've heard so much about COAST. It allows you to turn to that and just have a little bit more of a comprehensive look on what COAST is doing. Volunteer work of our members in the community on page 17, which is just amazing. It gives you a look at crime statistics, operating expenses, org charts, etc. Something I'm very passionate about, member care organizational wellness, that new branch, a look into the work that they do, and really charting a new course in all things HR, which our first ever civilian senior director of HR, which is Lindsay Ferrier, who runs the show there, overseeing recruiting, payroll, and of course, a number of specialty areas. It does give you a little bit of an overview of the third year of the business plan, which is why I've got the memos confused. And so it gives you a little bit more of a snapshot on what that progress is on that. So that begins on page 33, and really our achievements to date, the deliverables, what's completed, what is not, and kind of a high level look at that. So again, those three goals of our business plan: community safety, community well-being, and organizational capacity. So again, that report will be posted on our website, and I would be remiss to not return to this because it is not my work. It is that truly of our corporate communications team and media who have to format this whole thing to have legislative compliance. It is the work with our corporate team, again, with the data and all things that you see in that report. It's a fantastic job, and it really highlights and showcases the excellence of all of our people. So thank you for letting me return. Sorry, I messed up what that was on the agenda item. Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Chair. My apologies.
Thank you, Deputy Chief McIntyre. And in fairness to you, I think I might have confused you because I led with business plan instead of annual report. So I take a little bit of that responsibility where we will share in that. So given that there's been a little bit more of an in-depth dive into the annual report, do board members have any questions or comments about that? It is a beautifully laid out report and very comprehensive. So thank you. Echoing again the thanks to Joan and the team behind putting that all together. Board members? Okay, seeing none. Thanks again, Deputy Chief. Board members, you're not off the hook yet. We actually have a few in-camera items that we have to return to. Everyone else, though, is welcome to exit this meeting, and thank you, and have a wonderful summer, everybody. I hope everyone gets some time off to enjoy this beautiful weather. I think it's beautiful. Some may not. Thanks for attending, and board members, I'll see you in the other link in a couple minutes.